A dime in the rough. Hey guys, it's Anthony. I am here to start my new video blog called A Dime in the Rough. Some of you may be asking yourself the question, what? I thought that statement was a diamond in the rough? Well, I'm going to tell you a little story about my life and hopefully bring you up to speed on why dimes have such a great significance to me in my daily goings-on. So in 2012, I got sober for the first time from drugs and alcohol after going to an inpatient treatment center for about 30 days. And when I got out, I saw the movie Inception. And when I walked out of that movie, I decided that I wanted to have a totem. I was having a lot of difficulty trusting God. I was having a lot of difficulty trusting myself and knowing, like, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? Like, is everything that I'm doing inspired in some way? And so I just remember I prayed to God. I started praying for God to give me some kind of sign. So being raised as a Church of Christ preacher's kid, I was very, very exposed to faith and was given a very strong faith. I had wonderful parents who taught me how to love my Creator, who my Creator was, but I was still very, very scientific in mind, and it was really hard for me to imagine a fantasy thing that was in the cosmos, or this man sitting in the sky, or this divine spirit that wanted something good for me. And so I needed a scientific, or something was scientifically inexplainable, to show up so that I would know that this Creator was actually real. So as I started praying, it just was over a period of a couple months. About 6 months later, after I had been praying for God to really show up in my life, because I was in a spot where my life was going through a transition, and it was definitely something that was a time in my life where I was going to be willing to accept something miraculous if it was about to happen. So I remember about 6 months later, I started finding dimes. And I noticed I was finding dimes a lot. I wasn't finding nickels or pennies or quarters or dollars. I was finding dimes. So then I started asking myself the question, well, that's, it piqued my interest. It was happening enough that I was noticing that it was happening. And my brain was like, okay, this is kind of odd. But I wasn't quite sure if it had any, if it was just coincidental. I love coincidence. That word was very, very important to me early on. Coincidence, coincidence, coincidence. In my faith, the way I was raised, everything was a coincidence, or it was God, it was this miraculous thing that God has done. And I wasn't quite ready to believe either one of those. I was comfortable believing coincidence because I could just kind of, throw it off and not think about it. But I wasn't ready to believe that, everything was divinely inspired and God, God had a will for us. And I was having that trouble between fate and will, and God's will and my will, and how those two interacted, and why was I here? If God already had a plan for me and I already had a fate, then why would I have to exist? And it doesn't matter what decision I make because it's already made for me, or it's made by God and I have no involvement in the process. So anyway, I started seeing these dimes, and I started noticing that I was finding dimes. So I started asking myself the question. My scientific brain turned on, and I said, okay, now we're going to start studying these dimes showing up, and I'm going to start asking myself the question of what's going on when it happens, how often am I finding them, what day of the week is it, what's been going on in my life, etc. Just asking myself all those scientific questions to try to scientifically explain away something that was happening that I couldn't scientifically explain. So as time went on, I started noticing that the dimes were showing up in times where there was either something really drastic happening in my life. So I had either just had a very big falling out with someone, or I had made a really big decision in my life to go down a path that I wasn't quite sure about, or I was celebrating something amazing had happened, and the transition was on the rise, or a new job, or I was I found a new person or like a new group of people that I was hanging around with or whatever, it was always something that was connected with either drastic negativity or drastic positivity. And so as time went on, I started collecting the dimes. And throughout nursing school in 2015 through 2017, I collected quite a few dimes. So when I started collecting them well, shoot, it's not over here. I thought I was going to show you guys a box. But I started collecting them in this little box. And I had collected so many that the box would not close anymore. So now, the thing that's important to know here is that these dimes were showing up so often and always alone, never with another coin or dollar bill or whatever. It was just always a dime, and it was always out in the most random places. And they were showing up enough that I started talking to my friends about it, and I started talking to my husband about it, and started telling him, like, this is kind of weird. Like, I don't know what's going on, but it's happening enough that I should be probably noticing it, or I should probably be paying attention. So over the years of 2013 to now, I have really always just shared my dime story. My husband and I were on a cruise in Key West, Florida, that went down to the Bahamas with my parents. And we were on the deck and hanging out with some people that we had met from Denmark, and there was this lady from Canada. And if you're watching this, hi, she's still friends with me on Facebook. And she was listening to me tell my dime story to the guys that were standing on the deck, and she gets kind of like emotional. And I'm like, why are you getting emotional? And she said, you're telling my story. This is exactly what happens to me. I have this experience with dimes. So at that point I was like, okay, this is really weird. Like, I'm having this experience with dimes, and now I'm sharing the story with other people, and they're having this experience with dimes. There's got to be like something more to this. So then I started, telling more people, and I remember I met a lady in Alcoholics Anonymous, and she shared with me that, she'd always had a great relationship with dimes, and every time I post a dime story on my Facebook or Instagram or whatever, she'll comment and say, I'm still finding dimes. And now people in my life that I've begun to tell this story to, once I've told them the story, almost 85% of the time, they will find a dime within a week of me telling them the story, and I'll get a call or I'll get a text message or I'll see them in person, and they're like, oh my God, Anthony, I found a dime, and I thought of you. So over the last couple of months, I've started really trying to analyze and overanalyze these dimes. So I started asking myself the question, okay, we know it's a dime. What do we know about a dime that has any significance? So I'm a big numerologist, and so I was like, okay, the number 10. And I have a really good relationship with the divine, and my perception of God is not male or female, but it's both the feminine and masculine aspects of the divine creation. And so my siblings, or my two brothers, are into tech, and my younger brother is a programmer. And I started thinking about, okay, what do the numbers 1 and 0 mean in binary? And it's literally, those are the two numbers, 1 and 0, are the two numbers that make up the entire binary system. And if, it's the on-off, it's the present and not present, it's the divine masculine and divine feminine. The 1s and 0s, if you look in every mythological storyline, every following, every spiritual following, the symbols of 1 and 0, the 1 or the line and the 0 or the void represent the divine masculine and feminine. And it goes throughout all of ancient mythology. So then I started thinking, okay, wow, this dime is God's way, because when I was raised with a very masculine view of God. And not that that's wrong, or it's just that's the way that the faith in which I was raised believes. And but internally, I had always had a problem with that, wondering, well, is my mother not divinely inspired? Is my mother not able to have a relationship with a divine feminine God that connects more with who she is as a person? Are my women friends not able to look at God in such a way that is similar to them? Of course, I now believe that God is way bigger than a personified, animated, animus being. It's way bigger. It is it, he, she, them. It is all. He, them, God. The only reason we use the word God, in my personal opinion, is because it's the only word we know that can even get close in the human English, especially in the English language, of getting close to defining what this presence is. And in no language across the world, there's not really the proper pronouns to define the eternal, the highest being, the highest presence. So going back to the dimes, so over the last couple of months, I've started realizing I had stopped finding dimes. The dimes had stopped appearing, and I was getting really discouraged because this has been going on for now 6 years. And I started asking myself the question of, like, okay, the dimes are stopping. My relationship with God is in a weird spot. I'm kind of doubting myself. I'm doubting God. I'm doubting my life. I'm doubting my finances. I'm doubting a lot of things in my life. And so I started asking myself the question of, maybe the dimes were never really a thing to begin with. And then recently I went through a big transition. The restaurant that I was working at had to close suddenly. For those of you that are watching this that are from there, I love you. Mwah. And I was ready to take the next step to go back into nursing. And this week has been the week that has brought me back to this relationship with the dimes and with the divine. Huge shout out to my friend Kimber Falkenberg. I love you. You're totally the reason that this little idea of creating a video blog was in the back of my head. And I had not done it, and I had not done it, and I had not done it, but it had definitely been on my mind of something that I needed an outlet to be able to share this story with the world. And hopefully someone will be reached by it. So my plan over this next couple of months is to begin to share every dime story that comes into contact with myself, so that you can then begin to watch for the divine to show up in your life and figure out ways in which the divine is going to show up in your life. But I want to share really quickly with you, and we'll wrap this up, and then it'll be another story and another day for a dime in the rough. This week, I started my new job at Hill Country Memorial Hospital in Fredericksburg, Texas. I'm a registered nurse there. And I got to work on my first day during orientation, and my supervisor had taken me into the break room and said, pick any locker that's in here. And she gave us a little name tag, and she said, put it on the locker. So I'm looking around, and I don't know, a locker, I'm like, this locker looks good. So I open it up, and I'm like, yeah, there's nothing in it. And she's like, if there's nothing in them, then there's no name on them, so just put your name, and that'll be your locker. So this locker didn't have anything in it. And as soon as I opened it, sure enough, what was sitting on the locker, perfectly heads up where I could read it directly, a dime. And it was so awe-inspiring because it had been so long since I'd had one of these moments that I literally gasped. And my supervisor said, oh my God, what's going on? And I said, there's a dime. And of course, then I looked like a crazy person. Oh my God, there's a dime! For people who don't know my dime story, they're like, cool, there's a dime. Pick it up and put it in your pocket. But for me, it was a sign. It was a sign from the divine that this job was exactly where I was supposed to be. But God didn't want to stop there. God had a whole week of dimes planned for me. So my third day of orientation, I had walked in. I had done a whole set of training in another department, and then I came into my department, and I sat down at one of the computers, and I needed to use the computer to do some orientation things. And sure enough, I sat down, and right in front of the stapler, facing straight up, heads up, and directly towards me was this dime. And I immediately took another gasp, and the women that were in the nurse's station with me all looked at me weird and asked me what the question was. And the most important thing about this dime story is that it happens for me, and it's definitely a connection for the divine to me. But it's also a way for me to be allowed to share my story with my relationship with the divine creation with anyone that's around at that point in time. And what's beautiful about it is I always share it in such a way that I never want to encourage or discourage anyone's own belief system. If someone has a very specific mindset of what God looks like or God feels like or how they experience the divine creation, I never want to discourage that. So I always share my story from a methodology in which I feel like would be the most common in the environment or the group that I'm surrounded by. And so I shared my story. And then yesterday, what created this whole inspiration to really finally create this video blog was I was going to the mail, and I had found out about this new company called XYO. If anybody from XYO is watching this, I want my royalty check. They are a cryptocurrency, geo-cryptocurrency, like geohacking company. They use a software or an app called Coin. And you can actually go out, and it's kind of like Pokemon Go or geocaching, but you go out and you find tiles that are about 130 feet square, and you can geomine them. And you get this little it's almost like a node or a sentinel, and you put it on your keychain, and if you have it connected to the app, you collect a lot more cryptocurrency than you would if you just were using your phone. So I went to the mail yesterday because it was supposed to be in the mail. And I got out of the car, left the car door open, and went to the mailbox to open it, and came back. And as I was walking back to the car and going back to get in the car, I looked down at the ground, and sure enough, laying right there amongst the pavement, which blends in pretty well with regular parking lot pavement, was this dime. And I immediately knew that I was supposed to do this vlog. That was my higher power's way of showing me. The beautiful thing about the human brain and the way that the psyche works is human minds are always looking for patterns. We're always watching for, how am I connected to this, and how is this connected to this? Or maybe not everybody. Maybe it's just my crazy brain, but it's a human condition that we like patterns. We look for them. They exist in the world for a reason. They show us a lot about creation. Mathematics is highly based in patterns. So one of the things that's beautiful about dimes is it's allowed me to open my mind to looking for patterns in my life. Looking for ways in which the divine shows up. Looking for ways in which I can show up in other people's lives. And from there, yesterday, when I was walking back to the car, that dime was not only a symbol of, you're on the right path, this job is exactly where you're supposed to be, go home and get some rest, you've worked really hard this week, but I'm here for you. This is God's way of saying, I'm here, Anthony, like, never give up. Never shut your eyes. Never stop looking for the way in which I'm going to show up in your life. Always know that I will show up. And I was also going through some financial things. And this was God's way of saying, Anthony, stop. Just pause. Just pause and know that I am God. Just stop worrying about your finances because I can give you everything you need. When have I ever not provided for you? When have I ever not shown up in such a way that you've been taken care of? And you know what? I can take care of you in such a way that I'll give you everything you need, plus I'll give you a dime. And I got a little choked up because my brain often wants to doubt. I often want to stop believing that God knows who I am, that God has my name, and that God is always taking care of me. No matter my race, religion, sexual identity, creed, faith, practice, the divine creation, in my relationship with the divine creation, always shows up. And for years, I was told that it would not show up for me. But the dimes show me it does. It also reminded me that I have, weepy. I have a relationship with some amazing people in my life. My old bosses, Lindsay and Humphrey Crelia, if you're watching. I said Lindsay and Humphrey Crelia. Oh my God. Lindsay and Colby Crelia. Lindsay's maiden name is Humphrey. Lindsay and Colby Crelia. Mwah. They've been so kind this week. My BMW, the air conditioner went out in it, and my husband wrecked his car, so we sold it for parts. But we're in the process of buying a new car. But I've been driving back and forth. It's an hour-and-a-half commute from where I'm living or working, and they've been so kind to let me borrow their Prius because, unfortunately, Lindsay broke her arm a couple months back and can't drive, and so their Prius is being not used right now. And so they've been so kind, and I am eternally grateful for the opportunity to borrow that car and stay cool on my way to and from work. But the dime showed up right in front of their vehicle, so it was definitely a way for me to notice that God has inspired a relationship between myself and Lindsay and Colby, and we have become close enough in such a way that they feel comfortable allowing me to drive their vehicle. And while that may seem silly and simple for some people, it's a huge blessing for me, and I understand the trust that it takes to let someone else have your vehicle and drive it an hour and a half across the state every day for work and back. So many of you, for many years, have asked about my dime story and have wanted to know why the dimes and why do you constantly post pictures on Instagram and Facebook of dimes. It may be annoying to a few of you, but my goal is to, over the next however long, as I find these dimes, I want to share the story with you. And I encourage you, reach back out to me. Let me know if you're finding dimes. Tell me about your stories. I want to know how my stories are hopefully inspiring others to be watching for the divine feminine and the divine masculine in their lives. And I'd love to see if this opens up a new window and a new path and a new presence for other people who are watching this. So it's about 23 minutes and 45 seconds into the video, and so I'm going to let you all go. I'm actually on my way to meet with my AA sponsor. Mwah! Love you. And I will see you next time on A Dime in the Rough. Later, guys.